And soon after, friends of my family from New Hampshire called and said to me, "Norbu, what on earth are you doing in New York? You know, you should really consider coming to UNH instead, where the air is fresh, people are friendly, you'll get a great education, and you'll be close to the mountains." So, to no surprise, that's all it took. I applied to UNH, and not long after, I showed up in front of Smith Hall with 2 suitcases, that's all I had. And it was the best decision that I ever made. And my experience at UNH is what shaped the person that I am today. You know, at times our lives can be shaped by trusting in someone else's own experience, and sometimes by following our own instincts. 71 years ago, on the morning of May 29th, 1953, 2 men became the first to standing on the summit of Mount Everest. At that time, you can imagine it was the closest that man had been to the moon. One of them was my father, Norbu Tenzing Norgay, who was the son of a yak herder from Tibet, and the other, Edmund Hillary, a beekeeper from New Zealand. You know, from the top of the world, they had a spectacular views, 360-degree views, you know, from the top of Everest. So for Everest for my father, what was not just a mountain, you know, it was his home, and it sustained him. Ed Hillary and my father both sensed on the descent coming down that it marked sort of not the end, but the beginning of a new journey, which contained a commitment and a duty to give back to our communities. So like them, I took a similar path. I chose not to climb, but to use my education to listen to what my community expressed that they needed. So today, as you stand on the cusp of your Everest moment, I urge you to consider the power of your education. In a world today that is both deeply connected and morally adrift, your education and your values will be your compass, guiding you to make the choices that resonate with who you are and with what is best for the most vulnerable in our communities. You are, no doubt, amongst the most resilient of graduating classes in my lifetime, having not only endured the challenges of academia, but having to navigate the turbulence of a global pandemic which reshaped everyone's life. You know, in Buddhism, we have the belief that when something bad happens, it clears obstacles for better things to happen. So my deep respect to each one of you for making it through these challenging years, obviously with the support of your family, your loved ones, and your professors. And I hope that this experience has forged in you a deeper sense of purpose, and that obstacles have been cleared in your path. So with all that said, what did I get out of an education at UNH, and how did it shape my life? First, my friendships with my professors, such as Dr. Paul Majewski, and friends like Ola Ringsaker from Norway, have been lifelong pillars for me. The values that this institution instilled in me helped me meet the world with the confidence that I could achieve my goals and remain true to myself. There have been times in my life when I've reflected on those years to get me through. And I might add the fresh air of the White Mountains helped a lot. I learned to be responsible, disciplined, independent, and grateful, knowing the sacrifices that my family made to get me here, as have yours. I also had no family in the United States. Foreign students here can relate. Home to me was thousands of miles away, and making a scratchy, long-distance call was only meant for emergencies. such as the day my cousin called to say that my father had died. And during those difficult turns of my life, it was the family at UNH that gave me the support I needed. And for that, I'm grateful. My journey after UNH has taken me around the world. My experiences in diverse spaces and places have sort of underscored the fragility of our planet and the fleeting nature of life, inspiring me to dedicate myself to humanitarian causes for the past 30 years now. While San Francisco, please come and visit me sometime, is what I call home today, I've returned twice annually to my birth and spiritual home, high up in the Himalaya, for work over the past 3 decades. The communities that I work with, the Sherpas who struggle on the shoulders of Everest, the Tibetan refugees in exile who struggle daily to survive with very little recourse for help. We work to provide education, healthcare, revive our rich cultural heritage, and address the many environmental challenges facing our people. In recent years, I've also been involved with crisis response during the devastating 2015 earthquake in Nepal, and more recently during the COVID crisis, where we provided food, medicine, and supplies across our communities. I also, you hear about Everest in the news these days. During the spring, I advocate for reducing risk and inequity for Sherpas and mountaineering workers on the mountain, which today has become a playground for thrill seekers at the great expense of the lives of the workers. Speaking up for the rights of those who might not have access to power, even in very small ways, can make a difference for necessary change. I've seen firsthand the effects of climate change up close, and it poses a big threat, not just to our people, the Sherpas, but to the 1.6 billion people living downstream in India, Nepal, and Bangladesh. According to a recent study, the glaciers have disappeared 65% faster in the 2010s than the decade before. Our current emission shows 80% of glaciers' current volume will be gone by 2100. With that, the availability of water is expected to peak in the mid-century and then decline. Many of you know these statistics better than I do, but what I'm attempting to do here is to remind you, as human beings, we all have the choice to be compassionate. We can take a step to alleviate human suffering, whether it is giving a little bit of your time to volunteer, to advocate in your backyard, or in places far from you. After all, I believe we are all custodians of our planet and must do what we can to secure it for future generations so they don't suffer the consequences of our actions. The world we live in today feels smaller than ever, yet really so far apart. And we're connected these days by the click of a button, but so disconnected by our narrow self-interest sometimes. And I feel that we really can't afford to remain ignorant or turn a blind eye to things that don't seem to affect us directly in the moment, because we are, I think, all connected. Although I didn't set out a career in this kind of work that I do now, what UNH gave me was all the necessary tools to navigate my life. You might have studied engineering or geology or imagined a career in a related field, but you might end up doing something completely different, as I did. So my message to you as you're graduating is to keep an open mind, be guided by what motivates you, and lead lives that considers others as you do yourself. I arrived, as I mentioned earlier, at UNH with 2 suitcases and didn't know a soul here when I landed at Smith Hall. But I left equipped with a lifetime of values which have guided me to who I am today. father, he's the son of a yak herder from Tibet, never knew how to read or write. But he had a dream to one day make a pilgrimage to the summit of the highest mountain in the world, Everest, which he finally did on his 7th attempt. So the moral of this story is that it might not happen in the first try, but you must keep trying if it's important for you. And in closing, I'd just like to read a quote from him. Although he didn't know how to read and write, he had a friend of his help him write his book, in which he said, "What I can teach is not from books, to be sure, but what I have learned in living my own life. From the many people, many lands, many mountains, and most of all, from Everest. Some of it has to do with physical and material things, but not all of it. For I think I have learned other and more important things as well. One is that you cannot be a good mountaineer, however great your ability, unless you are cheerful and have the spirit of comradeship. Friends are as important as achievement. Another is that teamwork is the key to success, and that selfishness only makes a man small. Still another is that no man on a mountain or elsewhere gets more out of anything than he puts into it. So be great, make others great. That's what I've learned." So on that note, I'd like to thank you for having me here. It's been a real honor and a very emotional time for me as well, especially for you graduates. Congratulations to the class of 2024. Thank you.